There was a heat that day, the kind that sits heavy on your chest and makes the earth smell like rust and sorrow. The year was 1934, and down in Montgomery, Alabama, the sun bled gold over red dirt roads, and the church bells tolled slow, like they was warning somebody. That somebody was Elijah Turner, tall man, quiet man, skin dark as the river mud after rain, eyes tired from carrying more than any man should, and in his hand he held a letter. Not just any letter. This one had truth written all over it, truth sharp enough to cut a town clean in half. 2 nights back, his friend Samuel, church janitor, good soul, found that letter hid beneath the altar at St. Mary's Church. A confession written by the sheriff's own boy. Turns out that white boy was the one who killed little Tommy Harris, the black kid they hung from an old oak tree last summer. But they blamed Tommy, 'cause in Montgomery, back then, truth had a color, and it sure wasn't brown. Samuel never made it home that night. They found him behind the church come morning. Sheriff called it an accident. Elijah knew better. So now, that letter, that piece of paper soaked in danger, was Elijah's to deliver. And Lord, he knew what that meant. He walked slow through town, hat low, eyes on the dirt. Men watched from their porches, spittin' tobacco, grinning like devils. One of them called out, "Where you going, boy?" Elijah didn't answer. He just whispered to himself, "Now ain't the time to talk, Lord. Now's the time to move." The church loomed ahead, white and tall, like judgment itself. He'd scrubbed those steps 100 times, but today he came not to clean, but to save a soul. Inside, the air was thick with incense and silence. At the altar stood Reverend Jacobs, a man of God, and, rare as it was, a man of conscience too. "Elijah Turner," the Reverend said, "you best not be here, son." Elijah placed that folded letter on the pew, slid it forward. "I got something the Lord wants you to see." Jacobs opened it. His face went pale as church marble. "My God," he whispered, "this here's the sheriff's son's handwriting." Before Elijah could breathe another word, bang! The church doors swung open, and in walked Sheriff Doyle, 2 deputies at his heels, boots hitting the floor like thunder on a coffin lid. "Well, well," the sheriff grinned. "Ain't this a sight? A Negro breaking into God's house." Jacob stepped forward. "This man's done nothing wrong, Doyle." The sheriff ignored him. "You got 5 seconds to start praying, boy." Elijah's voice didn't shake. "I already been praying," he said. "Now I'm just telling the truth." Outside, church bells began ringing. Not for service, not for worship, but for justice. The townsfolk started gathering round. Jacobs threw open the doors, shouting, "This man carries the truth." Sheriff Doyle's boy killed Tommy Harris. Gasps rolled through the crowd like a wave. Some stood frozen, some cursed, some whispered, "Lord, help us." The sheriff turned red, eyes full of hate. "You shut your mouth, preacher." Elijah stepped forward, bleeding courage. He lifted that letter high and cried, "You can burn me, Sheriff, but you can't burn what's written." The gun flashed. The sound split the air like the sky itself was crying. Elijah fell, hard, blood blooming across his chest like a red flower. The letter slipped from his fingers. A young white woman, the sheriff's own niece, snatched it up before it hit the floor. She read it out loud, her voice shaking. And right there, under that white church cross, the crowd went silent. Then someone whispered, "He's telling the truth." Days later, Montgomery was a different place. Reverend Jacobs took that letter to the feds in Birmingham. The sheriff was put in chains, just like the ones he'd used on others. Elijah lived, barely. That bullet left a scar, a reminder of the day truth didn't die. When he woke, Jacob sat by his bed and said softly, "You saved this town's soul, Elijah." Elijah smiled, weak but proud. "I didn't save it, Reverend. Truth did." And years later, every Sunday, Elijah would walk back to that church. No colored section in the back anymore. No whispers when he walked by. Just hymns and sunlight. Right beneath that tall white cross, there hung a small glass frame. Inside it, the letter. Words faded, but never forgotten. And carved beneath it were the words that changed Montgomery forever. God's house has no color.